All right, we are recording the
We are
what is this?
back.
The Sauce Pod episode 2. Um, let me see
Three.
if I can get some 3. Yeah, 3. Yep, absolutely 3. Let's see if I can get some. I can. Here we go. I know. Yeah, they're great. Can you hear that? Cool.
Yep.
Let me fade it out. Boom.
Cool.
Nice. Cool,
We are
man.
back.
Today's Friday, like usual, when we have these little gatherings, little podcast Founders Friday. Oh, that's kind of neat. Founder Friday. Um, what has been going on, my brother?
Um, the market's dropped 3% for the ninth time this year. For fun
Oh
news
man.
and that.
So what
Uh,
what does that necessarily mean? Because you are like, I'm not really. I want to. I want to learn. So like, for a newbie, like, what does that? What does that kind of mean? Can you
well, they
explain that?
say that the market is well, I'm gonna correct this, but it's forward looking essentially.
Okay.
So like people are predicting the growth of the economy, and I just for transparency and make it easier to understand, I pay attention to mostly the S&P 500, which is just a
Gotcha.
basket of the largest 500 companies in the United States. So it's
Mm,
just kind of like a measure, a forward-looking measure of what the anticipated growth of the largest companies is going to be. And so with it going down, it's basically saying that over the next 3 to 6, to 12 months, we don't really expect we expect there to be less growth and more growth, and
okay.
that's kind of the easiest explanation for it
Yeah, yeah,
without
yeah.
getting too much in the weeds.
Right. So then that has like it going down. That's kind of what they've been talking about, the recession. And so kind of like keeping an eye on that, right?
Yeah, so the next step would be like the I guess the next easy way to explain it is like as interest rates go up, the cost to borrow money goes up. And so
I see.
that's what slows growth down. Where if you were to borrow, $1 million to grow electric sauce, you
Mm,
know, that money would have cost you, 1 to 2%, let's just say
mm,
on the low, back a couple of years ago. So, to borrow that and then you're making, those interest payments, and now it's going to cost you, 4 to 5% or more, so people are going to borrow less. Which basically means they're going to hire less. They're going to grow slower, like, high growth companies that take a lot of their profits and reinvest it.
hmm.
Let's say like Amazon, for example, like wants to like try new things. They're always like, what's next, in robotics, or
Mm,
what's another company that we want to acquire. Like you got to raise capital for all that, or you got to use what's called your like free cash flow, which are your profits to do those kind of things.
mm.
But typically they're going to invest their free cash flow, and they're going to want to invest even more than they make. So they're going to borrow money to reinvest for research and development, to
I
acquire
see.
companies, and so that money becomes more expensive to borrow.
Mm,
So you typically end up borrowing less and kind of pulling back. Yeah. So
gotcha.
what I was
That
reading that could be helpful for us is like, they were talking about kind of the article we were looking at before was like, a lot of brands were bringing marketing in house
yeah.
because there's kind of like that swing between why you would and why you wouldn't. And so one of the reasons why you would bring it in house is because you got the people that are more bought into your brand because they work for the brand.
Yeah.
And also the costs could be cheaper, to just have the employees versus having an agency.
Really?
But could be,
Could be. Okay.
could be.
Yeah, because
Um,
I think I hear like the other way too. It's like the a lot of times the agency can be more affordable for the brands. But I
well,
don't know. Maybe maybe some agencies are pretty pricey out there. So
well, that's kind of where I was going is like, since money is more expensive to borrow now. If you don't have the free cash flow to invest in hiring people,
Mm-hmm.
then it may be more cost effective for you to hire an outside agency because
Got it.
in my mind, I think it would be cheaper. It depends. We're focused on one channel of many, email.
Mm-hmm.
They're referencing all channels, Facebook, TikTok, paid ads,
Right.
email, organic. So all, CTV, all of these
Mm-hmm.
things. So yeah, we're one piece of the whole puzzle. But
Right.
yeah,
Right.
I
No,
think
that's
we're way
interesting.
more cost effective than a whole team, not to
Absolutely.
mention we're like a lot knowledgeable, so we're more efficient. So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
And the channel that we tackle, it being email and SMS, uh, it makes a lot of sense to hire kind of a small boutique agency, with like one little pod, a team, right? Which I think is like, and the fact that email is like a toll free, because you're not paying, for the consumer to see your stuff. You pay like a fee for the software, and then your fee for the agency. But like to send an email is free. You know what I mean? So that's really nice. And then if you kind of bottle that up into a nice little, you know, pricing package for the agents or for the brand, you know what I mean? Like we've done really well with one of the bigger brands that we've worked with. Like over 500,000 just within just like a weekend. I think that was it. What was it? Labor Day. We did really well for that beauty brand.
hmm
Um, so that was that
yeah,
was and that was just over the weekend. That was just a couple emails over the weekend. So that was really cool. And I know SMS did really really good too. So
yeah.
um,
I could see both sides of it. I mean, there's cases
right.
for either one, but yeah, it's interesting just to read
Cool.
about. Yeah.
Yeah, so this guy that I follow on Twitter, his name's Connor. He was talking about like client. He also owns an agency, and he's talking about like client retention playbook. And I thought it was pretty interesting. And I'll list off kind of he has three things to bear in mind: communication, results, and pricing. And so when all of these are executed perfectly, you really shouldn't be losing clients at all. Churn is honestly not the norm. And it says communication. The three things to consider with client communications are where you communicate, what protocols you have, and how responsive you are. It says they use Slack, which is pretty much the industry standard. And this allows it says this allows us to do Slack Connect, where no new channel is made. Interesting. Oh, okay. That's that kind of newer feature for Slack. That makes sense. Um, they also use Loom updates every 2 weeks. Uh, the week that they don't have the call, which is cool. We celebrate wins and normally have a separate channel for email and SMS approvals. Um, it keeps everything clean and it makes it so the client is always in the loop. Um, Having a call every 2 weeks is a huge help. Also, I know we kind of have like once a week with some of our clients, and then biweekly, and of course maybe that you know end of month kind of you know monthly month over month kind of report call is really really cool. So yeah, we're still under communication, so that's really cool. So it's really just connecting with the client, communicating with them with Slack and Loom, having some biweekly calls with them, being responsive. He says obviously, um, and let's see. And it says there is no scenario in which a client should be waiting for a response for more than 12 hours. So that's definitely cool. Um, and it says finally, while you're going to have wins, which you need to celebrate, you're also going to have some fuck ups. So you'll definitely want to, you know, call that out as well, is what he's saying. Acknowledge what happened, fix it, or show what you'll do to fix it, in the future, and then just don't let it happen again. So, and I think we're kind of going through that and just having those SOPs and having those reminders in the templates, like kind of like what we kind of experienced that today. And so luckily we have like really cool clients that know we're human and it is what it is, you know what I mean? But I think, you know, just kind of owning it, just like, oh yeah, you know, my bad, you know, and then having a reminder, hey, let's try and like add that to something, add it to a reminder, so then we know.
Yeah, as much as you're doing like, repeat, like when it comes to tasks like that, as much as you can make it like checklist and brainless as possible, like
Mhm.
you can just reduce those like little errors because there's a lot to think about. You expect, even with just something that seems simple like email, there's
Right.
still a lot of like little checkpoints along the way and things to check for that, you may forget
Mhm.
one or two. And so it's just nice to have like those little check boxes.
Exactly. The next one, number two, is results. Self-explanatory. You want to have good results, right? He doesn't really say much because it is like what it is. Oh, the quicker you can get wins here and the smoother your onboarding process is, the better. So I think that's like the two components for results. Obviously, having a good service, product, but then also being quicker wins. So the soon as they swipe the card, ideally we would want them to just like see money come up. It doesn't necessarily work like that directly for service businesses, but trying to close the gap as much as possible. So I think that's really cool. And then just having a smooth onboarding process is awesome, and we're definitely working on that. So yeah, I think that one's a good one. Results, obviously, and then pricing. What does he say? He says, I know many people struggle on this one, but it's kind of it lacks the nuances. So it says, and you it says you get so many types of Twitter. I don't even know what that word is. Raise your prices with no contents, no context, right? So it's like just raising your prices for no reason. You know what I mean? Um, but I think to your point, you were mentioning the other day, it's like let's time ourselves, you know what I mean? Let's like clock ourselves when we're building certain things. That way we do have like some sort of foundational idea on how long this stuff takes, you know what I mean? And then we know how to build that, you know what I mean? So that's really cool. He says we conservatively settle on 70 to 75% as the number. Note, not one to five man shops like agencies. I'm not sure what that means, but at the end of the day, I think okay, here it is,
70 to
right?
75% what?
So yeah, it says we conservatively settled on 70 to 75% as the number.
The
This is
number for what?
Yes, I remember calculating with a media buyer, okay, friend, the percent of ads agencies that lose their clients money. Oh wow, we conservatively settled on 70 to 75% as the number. Wow, really?
70 to 75% of the
Of
agencies lose clients. Is that what he's saying?
lose clients money.
Lose clients money. Okay.
Yeah, interesting. And so this this is because the pricing is simply insane. Okay, I guess that's like more geared towards media buyers. I'm not too in that, but he does say I do email and SMS marketing and would generally say to take 7 to 10% of the revenue you'll likely generate based on margins. Subtract a bit and do things on a tiered flat pricing structure that makes sense. You can be performance based without being on a percentage deal. By the way, so I guess yeah, he's saying using the 7 to 10% rule, but then subtracting a bit and then adding that as a flat rate, which is kind of neat. You understand? You see what he's saying?
Uh, I mean, I
Kind of.
understand 77 to 10% of revenue as a flat rate. Yeah, I understand that
Yeah.
part.
So we take 7 to 10% of their revenue, whichever that is, and then like just subtract a bit and do things on a tiered flat pricing structure that makes sense. I don't know. It sounds right in my head, but maybe not. But anyways, um,
Well, I'll just back up to like the communication and all that. I mean, I
okay.
just like I think when I think of like relationships in general, this may sound like philosophical or whatever, but like I think it's alignment, like having like a clear vision and like being aligned on that vision. So like when you start to work with like a brand and a group of people, like what are the goals that you're trying to achieve and how can we help you achieve those goals? Because
Mm,
when we talk biweekly or however often we're reporting, that's what we're trying to report on rather than just saying, here's your open rates and click rates. And,
right.
in the social media world, here's your CPC and your CAC, all these jargon words and
Right.
metrics, like, but how is that meeting the overall goal? Right. And so it's like,
Hmm.
okay, cool. Now that we're aligned on like what the goal is and what we're trying to work towards. And obviously it's like revenue for every company at the end of the day, but like, how
Sure.
do we, what is our focus like on trying to get there, and,
Hmm.
um, and then, it's just like managing expectations. Right. And like you kind of talked about like having a good process, like good
Hmm.
onboarding, good communication process, whether that be Slack or like what goes in Slack versus what goes in an email. And just kind of like, I think having that kind of clear understanding with the client and setting the expectations properly of like, this is how we do things. How do you guys prefer to work? And we can kind of meet in the middle. That way we're aligned and,
Hmm.
the expectations are clear across both sides. Like, this is how we'll do approvals if we do,
Sure.
things like that. So
Right.
I think if you kind of miss those early steps, then it can be easy to get down the road and think you're doing everything well, where in the meantime, the client's been kind of grumbling in the back, and then you've got churn just a few months down the road because the client has, maybe spent like a couple months with you, but they're not really super jazzed on the results, or maybe you have been doing good results, but they just don't really enjoy working with you because the communication or the expectations weren't properly set up in the
Yep.
beginning. And so, I think that the relationships and the communication part are like probably more important, or at least are just as important as like the results are, because anyone can get results if they know what the heck they're doing. But are you like, do you have a good process? Are you fun to work with? Like,
Hmm.
do you communicate in the style that aligns with like how our brand likes to work and
Yeah.
communicate? Like stuff like that. So
Yeah. No, I love that, and it makes me think about like not always like thinking about like the revenue, the money. It's like kind of the culture of like the partnership. You know what I mean? I feel like that's
yeah,
really important. It's like I don't know, like if the money was good and like the work was good, but for whatever reason there wasn't that connection with like vibes, like both good vibes on either side.
right.
And you know what I mean? I feel like there's like which is cool. Like I think we watched a video on a guy who was like, hey, so we're good on the money side, that's what we charge, but let's just make sure that we're aligned on the culture side. This is kind of how we do things. Are y'all okay with that? You know what I mean? And we
Yeah.
can kind of, like you said, meet in the middle. But at the end of the day, we do have a process, and that's why we have, that's like part of our product. You know what I mean? Is the process of it being so smooth. Um,
And you're really
so,
like
but
dating people like during this
right.
process, like we've totally, I don't think any business that works with other businesses in that B2B relationship has gone without finding a bad date, right? You date,
Yeah.
we work with all these different clients, and thankfully the clients that we work with now, we love working with, and it's completely different than it was last year where we had
Hmm.
a small handful that were really hard to work with, and we just, you know,
Yep.
yeah, it was a really bad date every
Yeah.
time. So,
Yeah. It
you
just
know,
didn't connect. It didn't. It'd be funny if there was, because like all those dating apps, like man, there's some like Hinge. One of them is like at the time. That's where I met my fiance at was on Hinge, but like, it's real granular. You can really pick like certain things that you want or don't want. Um, and it would be kind of neat if there was like some sort of like find an agency, like app, and it's like, do they go surfing in the mornings? You know what I mean? Like, what do they like to do? You know what I mean? It's like
Right.
finding like really cool partners, because I know agency has like a bad name to it, because there are some, I just saw one not too long ago. This guy on Twitter was getting called out because he was faking the screenshots. Like in Klaviyo, you can see like the revenue shit, like how much you've made for the client in revenue, but he forgot to change the pie chart. And the pie chart still showed at like 10%, but it showed 45% on the number. So
It's just
it's
terrible that people will go to that length to do stuff like that, and
yeah, and then it
because it
makes
really
everybody
just
else look bad.
You're right, it ruins it for all of us.
Seriously, that's wild, man. So
I'm glad they got called out. This
me too.
really,
Me too.
yeah.
Yeah. And he had like a pretty big following on Twitter, but that just makes me think he just bought most of them. He bought Twitter followers just to make himself look good.
Yeah,
So,
and I mean the nature of like social media in general is like so many things aren't there's no context given to a lot of those things. It's like
hmm
it's just some random quote, and there's no like or
yeah.
some random result, and you're just like okay, like there's I don't
All
know, I
right.
just how it always kind of irks me a little bit with some of that stuff because you
hmm
should I'm really just more about like let's just add value rather than just trying to like stroke our own egos online.
Yeah, yeah, and that's another thing. It's like I'm a little skeptical with like marketing on Twitter. Like, maybe one day like we'll have like a bigger following on here, and like anything that we post, like other like the actual brands are on here. But and honestly, I just feel like Twitter is just like has a bunch of newbie agencies, and anybody that's a little more advanced just like sends out all this like free information, and all these other newbie agencies just grab onto it, and it's just like this cycle of just like the same information over and over. Some, don't get me wrong, some of it's good, like we just read this one here, client retention, but like, I mean, he that's his own thoughts, you know what I mean? His own experience, but you just called out your own, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, I think it's kind of all the same, you know what I mean? But I don't know, like I don't really, I could be totally wrong. I just don't see, you know, you posting like a screenshot of Klaviyo, and I made this client 200,000. I mean, our agent or like brands actually, oh man, yeah, like that's awesome. Let me get in touch with him. Does that actually work? You know what I mean? Like
Right. And
I'm
again, it's
wondering.
like completely out of context. It's like 200,000 could be like 30% less than what they usually make, but it sounds
Yeah,
good out of context.
right,
You know?
exactly. That too, you know what I mean? Like, but even I don't know, like this one right here is like your 7-figure Black Friday Cyber Monday email playbook in a nutshell. It's got 14 likes, 2 retweets, and one person commented on it. You know what I mean? And it's like, I don't know. Maybe I'm looking at it differently. A before and after. You know what I mean? Like the numbers of Klaviyo.
Hmm.
I don't know if brands are actually on here doing
Yeah, it's
that.
interesting.
Um, but yeah, man. I did want to call out, switching the topic here, but I did want to call out the Formula One.
Hmm.
So I got to watch it over the weekend. It's actually happening right now, but it's in Japan, and so the timing is like super crazy.
So was
So let me,
it was in Singapore and then it moved to Japan or has it,
yeah,
yeah?
yeah. So it was in Singapore, and then now they're in Japan, and so I'm looking. I got the app here. Let's see. Um, so the race. So there's always a race. There's always practice on Fridays, and then there's a practice on practice 2 and 3 on Saturday, and then how does this? Oh, I think this is a little different actually. The sixth. What is the sixth? The sixth is yesterday. Okay, interesting. This is a little different. Normally they have, I don't know, maybe because like Japan or whatever, but normally they don't do anything on Thursdays. Yesterday was actually Thursday, so. But anyways, um, and then the ninth. What day is the ninth? Are they having?
Sunday.
That is Sunday. Okay, okay, good. So yeah. Anyways, so it's gonna be at like 10 o'clock midnight for us.
Uh-huh.
And so that's just kind of how it is. But so that'll be Japan. But the Singapore race was pretty good. I'm Team Ferrari. I like Charles Leclerc and the Sergio, not Sergio, but Carlos. Those two guys are good. They're really good, man. Ferrari does really good. The best one, or the max, the lead is Red Bull. So they're doing the best in terms of the drivers. Charles Leclerc is in second place. He's got 237 points, and then Max Verstappen has 341. And so that's for the drivers' championship. And then they have the constructors, which is based on the team. And so still Red Bull is also in the lead at 576 points, but Ferrari isn't too far behind at 439. And so every time you win, you get more points. And I think first place is 25 points, and it drops down to 18 points, and it goes. And I think like the points start at 10th place. Like if you make 10th, you get like 1 point. So.
Okay.
So as long as you make at least 10th, then you can like add some points to your
And have you had a chance to look like historically, like who has like won the most?
I would say Lewis Hamilton. He is for Mercedes, and I want to say he won like 7 or something like that. I could be wrong, but I know that he was like one of the best, like. For a long time. He was really good. And then Daniel Ricciardo was really good too. So, but I don't know. It's crazy how they'll be doing so good, and then, just, I guess better race or better drivers. Lewis Hamilton's been in the game for a long time. I think he's like in his 30s, like 34, 35, maybe even slightly older. But Charles Leclerc, he's like 20. I think he's like 24. You know what I mean? His teammate Carlos, he's like 28. So they're still, fairly young. But so
how long
I'm not
has
too
Formula
sure.
One been around?
Ooh, oh man, that is a good question. I felt like I knew that before you asked me.
No worries.
Man. It's been around for a long time. I want to say like I'm drawing a blank now, but I want to say like the 20s or so, but I don't know. I think if I read the stats, I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's what it was." So
Yeah,
I'm still a newbie on it, and but it's
no
fun.
worries.
It gives me something to do. That's other than work. But the cool thing is that looks like they have a pro championship event, so I'll have to look into that. I'm not sure. I'm not too sure what that is, but round 19, which I'm assuming is like race 19, it's here in the States. It's going to be here in Austin, so that'll be the 21st through the 23rd. So that'll be really cool. So we definitely need to, because it'll be at two in the afternoon. So. Really cool.
Cool.
So I think we can make a weekend of it, like a Formula One weekend would be really fun. So
Cool.
cool stuff. And then they'll have Mexico, Brazil, Abu Dhabi, and then the Pro Championship event number 4. So I need to refresh on these, like event 2, event 3, and then event 4. So yeah, there's like events spaced in between these races, but I want to say next year they have like maybe 2 or 3 months off. So I don't think they race January, February, and I think they start racing sometime in March. and maybe December, January, February, and I think it's towards the end, early March maybe, when they start back up, and then they pretty much race the entire year. So it's pretty crazy. And so I think you even saw it too. The following is going to be like 24 races. It's kind of crazy. So
yeah, that was like the one. I think it was used to be. Yeah, now it's 24. It used to be like less than that. So they're just
yeah, it's
few
like
more in.
20 or 21. Yeah, so they have a new track in Miami, Florida, and then they have the one here in Texas, in Austin, Texas. So that's pretty neat. But yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, I thought that was cool. What else we got today? I know we're wanting to cut it short. Try a shorter version. What do you think? You want to keep going?
We could cut it and jump into another one, or
yeah, sounds good.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. All right. We are
outro music.
Outro music for sure. Let's see what we got here. Let me put it on the live, and then these are labeled weird, so I don't know what they're. All right. There we go. We are out of here. Peace.